Many of us have the holiday tradition of putting together gingerbread houses, but I don't know about you. I really struggle with this, end up breaking pieces, eating the candy. That's better than I thought it would be. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a quilted gingerbread house that's just as fun to make, even if it isn't as tasty. So be sure to like and subscribe and ring that bell, because every time that you ring the bell, an elf gets their ears. Okay, I don't know if that's true, but definitely enlist some elves of your own and get started on this new tradition that will liven up your home and become the centerpiece of your holiday decor. For this project, you're going to need some main fabric that is going to be your main outside part of your gingerbread. You're also going to need some lining fabric, and you're going to need some stiffer, heavyweight, double fusible flexi foam. One of the things that's going to be very important about this project is making sure that it is well basted. So definitely some kind of spray based or heavyweight interfacing. For the cutting of this project, I used a variety of our True Cut rulers. I used a couple of our square rulers. I also used our My Comfort cutter in the traditional 45 and the 60 once I got everything quilted together. First thing that you want to do, according to the pattern, is you're going to cut a couple strips of your main fabric and your lining fabric to go with this fusible interfacing and iron it really well. The exact measurements are located in the pattern, which you can find in the description of this video. After I basted very well, I added some leftover leaders that I had. They're pieces that I cut off from something else. I pinned it to the shortest side, which is 16 inches, and this just gave me the little extra that I needed to hold this. For this project, I decided to use the mini quilter since I do have kind of a smaller piece that I'm quilting, and the little rebel so that I had plenty of throat space. I decided, since this is a gingerbread house, and a lot of times if you look at like gingerbread kits, they've kind of imprinted what looks like bricks. So I'm just going to free motion some brick designs. The heavy interfacing is stiff, so I'm using the mini quilt clips to help me hold the excess roll, in addition to the bungees that come with the frame. Tip: if your fabric is directional, you'll either want to quilt starting at the bottom or flip your quilt sandwich upside down and quilt from the top. For the quilting, I'm using Finesse Classic Variegated Latte on the top and Solid Light Sand in the bobbin. Because this material is so stiff, it's very important that you've basted well so your fabric doesn't shift. One of the reasons that I chose the mini quilter is because it doesn't have a very large footprint. So when I'm done quilting this and take it off the frame, I can easily store my frame, get it out of the way, and set up my little rebel for the sewing portions that I need to do for this project. Now that we have our fabric quilted, it's time to cut out some of the pieces of our gingerbread house for the structure. So we're going to start by using the templates that are provided in the pattern, and we're going to trace around these. There's enough material here to make a couple, and so I just find it easier to trace. And you can do it on the wrong side or the right side. For the most part, I'd recommend the wrong side of the material. You're going to need 2 of the peaked ones and 2 of what's going to be your sides. Going to use our straight 3x18 ruler and our 60mm My Comfort cutter to cut along on those lines. And with our pieces cut, this part we definitely want to do on the wrong side. We're going to trace out our doors and windows. I gave these a quick press so they'd lay a little bit flatter, and now I'm just going to flip them over so the wrong side or the lining side is facing me, and it's time to draw out all my doors and windows. Now we're going to cut out all of our doors and windows using a craft knife. It's so small and detailed that a rotary cutter is just not going to give us the cuts we normally would get. This is an optional step, but if you want to add windows, you can cut some clear plastic vinyl. I have a couple different ones here. One's got kind of a fun pattern on it. This one here is just clear. And I'm not really going to measure this. I just want to make sure that it's larger than my cutouts, and I can just do one piece that's going to cover that. I'm going to put it on the wrong side, and then when I go to my sewing machine, I'm just going to stitch around the edges here about 1/8 of an inch so that it secures it, but it's going to get covered, so I'm not worried about what it looks like. Now that we've prepared some windows, we want to make a door. So we're going to cut a couple of small rectangles. And if you want, this part's optional, but I wanted it to be a little padded. So I cut a piece of leftover batting that I had 1/4 inch smaller all the way around. So I'm going to place that on one side. Now my fabric here is one directional, so I have it this way, make sure I got the right direction. And then I'm going to place the right sides together, and we're going to go do some stitching. We're going to trim our corners, okay, being careful not to clip the thread, and then we're going to turn this right side out, pushing out those corners. So we have our door, and the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to make a piece of double fold binding. This one is a matching double fold binding, and I want it to match up with this because it's going to finish this edge and it's going to create the hinge that we need when we sew this on the door. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold over a little section of this, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a press. And what I'm trying to do here is finish off the edge. Then I'm going to take a little bit of school glue, and I'm just going to put a really thin dab there, and I'm going to press again, and that's going to help me finish my edge, and I'm not going to have a stitch seam there. And then I'm going to make sure that this is about 1/4 of an inch larger so that when I fold this over and glue it down, it'll be large enough to cover my raw seam. And then I want to fold over and press again that double fold so that it's nice and flat. We're going to need to do some decorating of our gingerbread pieces before we start to sew the structure together. So I just got myself a variety of some fun fabrics. Like I said, follow the instructions of the pattern. Again, remember that that is in the description below this video. And do me a favor, while you're watching, go ahead and like and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And let us know in the comments if you're enjoying this video. So I'm going to cut various strips, and I'm going to make single and double folded binding. And we're going to head over to the pressing station and start attaching those. So you see I've got some of these on here already, and I've got a variety of different ones that I've cut in different sizes. I glued this to avoid having a lot of bulk. So in my double fold, I just put that nice thin line and pressed it so that it holds together. And then to finish the edges, and I'm just going to use a pair of pinking shears to finish the edges. It's going to give it a decorative element, but it's also going to finish the edge so I don't have to worry about too much running. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. So the other thing I'm doing that's a little bit different is I'm going to use hot glue to put on my decorations. And I'm just putting it right along the edge there. I just want to put my window decoration so it's overlapping the window a little bit. It's just going to give it a nice finished look. All right, so we have finished putting all of our fun decorations. We're going to add some binding, as you see here. I'm going to go ahead and throw my binding on the bottom part, so let's head over to the machine. To the sides of the houses, we added binding to the two long edges, but for the peaked parts of the houses, we're only going to add it to the bottom. This one is single fold binding, so we're sewing down on the front side, our typical 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And we're just going to fold that binding over, and we're going to stitch in the ditch on the main fabric side. All right, with our binding on, now we're going to start assembling the main part of our structure. So I'm going to place my right sides together, clipper pin in place. Then I'm going to sew my 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to fold this over, do the same thing on this side, and then I'll have this piece, and then I'll add this one. So let's head over to the sewing machine. All right, so you see we have a box, but it's wrong side out, so we're going to flip it, and you want to do this carefully. One, it's really stiff, and two, you do have decorations on there, so you are going to fight it a little bit. All right, right now it looks more like a crown. than it does a structure. So we have to reshape it, and we're going to do that by pressing our seams together that we did to create our structure, and we're going to add some clips all the way around it. We're just going to keep adding clips, and then we're going to set it aside so it can rest and regain its shape. All right, so while this is sitting to the side and resting, we can work on the roof. All right, for the roof, you're going to need to cut some 2.5-inch squares, and then you're gonna cut them in half diagonally like you see here. These are gonna make up the tiles of our roof and make it look kind of snowy. Again, I'm using the pinking shears for that. And then I'm gonna need a certain amount of them cut in half as well to finish up the edges. So I'm gonna work on that. And then you're also going to need to make a chimney. The chimney is going to be a rectangle that is cut from your quilted gingerbread fabric, and you can add binding, fold it together. I did a little bit of cutting through the inside part so that it would bend a little bit nicer, sewed it together, and then I have the chimney that's going to go in the final piece when we're done with that. You're also going to need your template. You'll need 2 pieces of fabric for your roof. And you're also going to need 2 pieces of lightweight fusible interfacing. We'll follow the instructions of the manufacturer to fuse those to the wrong sides of that material. And then you're also going to need a couple of pieces, same size, of the heavyweight interfacing that we've been using as well. So I'm going to run over to the iron and iron these, work on getting these cut to the different pieces, and we'll see you back in a flash. All right, so I have all my triangles cut and laid out. So I'm going to start with the first row here, and I'm going to lay my first one so it overhangs, and I'm eyeballing to make sure that it's center. And I'm just going to pin this in place. And then I'm going to overlap the next one and also pin it. And then we're going to sew our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then we have our first row on. We're going to repeat for the second row. All right, for the second row, we're going to overlap. And I want to alternate the bigger triangles. Again, pinning in place just to keep it where I want it. And then on these rows where I only have the 2 larger triangles, this is where I need the smaller 1/4 triangles that I cut. And I do like to tuck them underneath because they are smaller, and pin those as well. And we're back to sewing our seam allowance. We're going to continue to alternate these until we fill up the roof. It's okay if you have a little bit of a space here, or if you fill it up all the way, that's really up to you. I did one both ways to kind of show you. And now we're going to take this back to the cutting board and work on the next step of our roof. I am going to start by folding this over about 1/4 inch and pressing it really, really well. Notice I'm only folding the roof fabric. To one of these, I'm going to draw out, and we'll do this on the wrong side, where my chimney is going to go. We're going to cut that out with our craft knife. If you need to, finish up with some scissors. But we're going to do the same thing to one of the pieces of the heavyweight interfacing. You're also going to want to check how much of an overlap you have on your interfacing now that you have folded your roof over. It's not too bad. I'm not too worried about it because it's going to get covered by my snowy tiles. And so now we're going to go iron these pieces really, really well to our roof, right? And this is going to give our roof that structural stiffness that we need for final assembly. Once you have it adhered, if you want, you can adhere another piece of fabric to this side. I didn't because you can't really see it anyway once it's all assembled, but if you do want to finish that off, you can. Now we're going to do a little bit of trimming. We're going to trim off the excess of our roof tiles on the sides only. We want that overhang at the bottom. You'll be sad if you cut the bottom. I almost did that the first time. I was like, wait, I just got into the cutting rhythm, and then I was like, oh no. We're going to place our roof right sides together, pin or clip that top edge, and we're going to sew it. So I'm pressing open this seam. I'm just finger pressing it because I didn't finish the edge, but I'm just going to finger press it open, and I'm just going to stitch it down so it lays a little flatter. We're going to give this a good press to try to get our shape. All right, we're getting to final assembly. I have a couple of strips that I have cut and finished off one edge to kind of act as binding and that little bit of the roof that tends to overhang. And so we are going to start by deciding where we want to put this. And notice I got my pinking shears because we want to finish off these edges as well. So I have this one and I'm feeling for where the edge is. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew this on. Standard seam allowance, and I'm putting right sides together. Right, as I'm getting closer to the other end, I'm going to go ahead and finish this edge off. And do the same thing with the other side. I decided to mix it up so I have different decorative fabric for both sides. Isn't this snowman fabric so cute? And now we're going to give it a good top stitch. All right, now it's time to add the chimney to our roof. And so I'm just tucking this in here, and you're going to have to put it in at an angle so that when it sits on your final structure, it's straight. So you're just going to fiddle with that until you get where you want it. And then I'm going to add some hot glue inside to hold that in place. Remember, this is our frosting, but don't eat it. Gonna let that sit to the side for a few minutes so it can cool. And now I'm ready to take my clips off. So you can see we have a better shape than we had before. It's definitely more box-like. And now we just have to decide what side we want our chimney on. That's really up to you. I think since I have it, I think I'll do it this way. And we're also going to glue the roof on. So we're just going to start with a nice strip of glue down the side. The glue's hot and it get it all over my fingers. So I'm really in here just trying to line up those edges as best as possible and kind of holding it until the glue sets. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. For the roof, I want a little bit of snow that's going to cover this area here. And I'm just using some polyester batting you can get, from the craft store. I'm just kind of using what I have around the house. Be generous with the glue so that you get exactly where you want that snow to be. And if you need to add a little bit more, you can. Now, I have some glitter, and I'm just going to add a little bit of an adhesive. I'm going to tuck it over here so I don't get it all over the countertop. Now, the one I'm using is technically a temporary. It's what I have, but you want to get something that's a little bit more permanent. Now, the temporary stuff stays tacky for a while. It's designed to wash out, but since this isn't a project that I'm going to wash out, it actually will eventually dry. And now it's time to finish. And so we're going to start by just kind of tucking, and we're just going to put a little dollop of glue, and that's going to hold that down. Same thing on the other side. So you just kind of fold it, and then just a little dollop of glue there, and that's going to finish the edge. So it's pretty much done. You can add any additional decorations that you would like. Like I made these little candies, and they're just made out of buttons. Pull out the colors I tend to not use very much. And I cut a little strip, and we're just going to glue the button to the fabric, and then we can fold over and glue that as well. Then I just took a little bit of matching thread. So this is our ruby red from our Finesse Classic line, and I just tied around the ends to give it that wrapped candy look. With that done, I can add it wherever I want. So I think I'm going to add a couple of pieces back here, and you can decorate with anything that you find. It's really kind of up to you. Is these type of decorations you want to do more towards the end just because they'd be in your way when you were doing your assembly. You can add a bottom to it if you want. This is just made out of cardboard and more of this and some of the glue and the glitter. And I just had some cute other holiday fabric that I could cut trees and stuff out of. And I also added some lights. And to do that, I just got one of these really simple lighting things that you can get that are battery operated. And these are wiry. If yours isn't too wiry, you don't like where they're at, then you can use pins. And then you just simply put your house over it, and now you have your very own gingerbread house that will last forever. So remember that you can find the pattern to this, the free pattern, in the description of this video, and we'd love to see what your gingerbread houses look like. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, I've been playing long enough. I better get to Santa's workshop before he gets mad at me for quilting and not building toys. Happy holidays!